what happened to the Stormtroopers after the fall of the Empire? When the Empire fell, it was said that the entire galaxy celebrated, none more than the heart of the former Empire, Coruscant. Yet, with that being said, have you ever wondered as to what happened to all of those Stormtroopers who served the Empire? What happened to the ones seemingly Empire fell? Unlike the Republic, who used genetically modified and cloned humans to make up their army of the Republic, the Empire changed that as they would instead use recruitments from all across the galaxy to fill their ranks. And this army would be the primary force of the Empire for around 20 years. But when the Empire lost and began to crumble, what happened to these soldiers? Well, immediately following after the Battle of Endor, news spread like wildfire about the death of Vader and the Emperor. This sent the Empire into a downward spiral as the remaining generals and officials frantically panicked to make sense of what was to happen. Many other forces were divided as battles and uprisings popped up all around the galaxy, and with no backup or plan, many of these Imperials would be captured as they stood little chance against the New Republic. And these defeats would result in the capture and execution of many Stormtroopers. Those who weren't killed in the immediate aftermath would be taken away and sent to prisons, or they would be sent to the New Republic capital on Chandrila, and there would face more ridicule and hate from the people. However, many smaller factions of the Empire would remain, staying on outposts scattered across the galaxy and maintaining control over a few planets. But like all bad relationships, without proper communication and planning, they struggled to keep control and order. Eventually, many remnants of the Empire would form together and create a group that would enact the contingency plan known as Operation Cinder, which would see the mass chaos and many worlds. Post-recording nerd here. For some clarification, this is what Operation Cinder was. In short, it was a contingency order for if Palpatine was ever to die, it would deploy these satellite-like devices that were meant to create these unnatural and incredibly dangerous storms within the atmosphere of a planet. Naboo, for example, was used as one of its primary targets because it was the home of Palpatine and he wanted to show how little he cared. And based on the target of the planet, it was meant to either punish the Empire or destroy hope for the New Republic. But yeah, it was like an FU situation. Palpatine, I guess, got the last laugh. But back to the video. But the Order's primary goal would come to its peak during the Battle of Jakku, and this would also be largely considered to be the final battle of the Empire. Now, initially, Palpatine's final plan for the Empire, if he was to die, was to take everything else with him, as if he couldn't have it, no one can. However, while this was meant to happen during the Battle of Jakku, the man in charge, Gallius Rax, was meant to cause the destruction of both sides by destroying the planet of Jakku. But ultimately, he would be stopped by Grand Admiral Rey Salone, who was told to complete this order by rebuilding the fragmented forces in the unknown regions. Agreeing with this, Rax would soon die afterwards, as the few forces that remained of the Empire would either be defeated or flee to the unknown regions. After the Battle of Jakku, the few remaining Imperial officers would sign the Galactic Concordance with the New Republic, and what this did was forbade the remaining Imperial units to continue on the training of new Imperial recruits. It also forced the Empire to abandon the Imperial academies, ensuring that no more recruits could ever be made to refill the population. And this, as a direct effect, instantly put a number on the amount of Stormtroopers that would exist, a number that would only decrease as time went on. However, it also allowed a small proportion of the galaxy to be considered the Empire. However, as it had no means of ever building up a sizable army ever again, the Empire basically was extinct. Yet, while this agreement was signed by the Imperial remnants, not all of the Imperials followed this or agreed with it. For starters, many Stormtroopers who served the Empire would not abandon their ways, and instead pursued a life of being a mercenary or an outlaw who worked for the highest bidder or Imperial warlords. But it's safe to say the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps was now nothing more than the past. But this also isn't to say that they weren't a threat. As we have seen in The Mandalorian, under the leadership of Moff Gideon, they could still pose a sizable opponent. Besides that, though, the position of being a Stormtrooper was outlawed across the galaxy, and thus many former Stormtroopers would completely disregard their past and their armor. But some, instead of hiding it, would become guns for hire who weren't part of a larger remnant or the Empire. Instead, they would just be mercenaries or low-tier bounty hunters, using their skill to make a life for themselves. But those who were not part of any larger organization within the Empire would instead be fighting blindly across the galaxy against an enemy that defeated them long ago. And as I've mentioned, the act of being a Stormtrooper was now outlawed across the galaxy. Very similar to how the Jedi were, as if a person was seen as a Stormtrooper with their armor, they could and oftentimes were shot on sight. And like we saw in The Mandalorian, those who still donned their armor did so in the shadows as to not draw attention to themselves. However, while the New Republic did reclaim the galaxy and publicly declared the Empire as defeated, as we have established, it was not all gone. Many strongholds remained and warlords still plagued the Outer Rim, as the New Republic did not want to interfere back there, unfortunately letting them run rampant. But without the help of any larger force, many of these Imperial remnants would be confined. It should also be stated that it wasn't just the New Republic the Imperial remnants had to worry about, but also the people, as without the fear of the Empire attacking them, many people would revolt and kill the Stormtroopers, hanging their helmets up on display like we saw in The Mandalorian. But there were some cases of former Imperial Stormtroopers up and switched sides joining the New Republic. And that's it. There's definitely no more to add on to the story that involves a returning Empire called the First Order that somehow returned, and somehow managed to create a bigger and better superweapon, that somehow managed to create an insanely large army with little explanation, and somehow
Palpatine returned.
Yeah, nothing like that. That wouldn't make any sense. But hey, you wanna know what else doesn't make any sense? The Jedi Temple Guards during Order 66. To find out what happened to them, make sure to click on screen now. But anyway, that is what happened to the Stormtroopers after the fall of the Empire. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, it would mean a lot to me if you could like and subscribe, as it would help the channel out a ton. Also, make sure to join my new Discord server, link is in the description. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.